And now we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth. They're stepping up the attacks on Trump's nominees for cabinet positions. And I say that laughing because they have no idea the beast that they have awakened. Pete Hegseth is a disruptor. And because he's a disruptor and threatens to disrupt the military industrial complex itself, Pete has come under horrendous attack. And not attack for the policies that he wants to implement at the Department of Defense, not attack for his political positions, but character assassinations and reputation smears, personal attacks from anonymous sources. You'll remember a couple of days ago, the New York Times published an email sent to Pete Hegseth by his mother, Penelope. This was years ago during a nasty divorce that Pete was going through, and his mother sent him an email telling him to stop sleeping around. She said, "You're being nasty to women, and I'm not proud of that kind of behavior in my son." How a personal email like this got in the hands of the New York Times, maybe that's the question we should be asking. From my perspective, I don't agree with Pete sleeping around. I think a lot of people probably don't. Will that impact his ability to do his job at Department of Defense? Absolutely not. We'll get to that in a second. Pete's mom went on Fox and Friends this morning to talk about that email, this line of attack the left has gripped a hold of. And this is what she said. Take a listen.
What's one thing about Pete people don't realize?
That he's got a big heart, that he's very smart.
Yeah.
He is the most faithful patriot of this country. He loves his country, He's fought and almost died for his country. He's a good dad. He's an amazing son and father. And that's the Pete I want people to know.
The nomination of Pete Hegseth is critically important to our country, critically important. That entire interview with Penelope Hegseth on Fox was 15 minutes long. It is well worth the watch of the entire interview. Penelope Hegseth is furious with the media for their double standards and their lack of context, as she should be. Imagine, for example, if we held this standard to senators in the United States Congress. Imagine if we said, well, Senator, whoever, Republican, Democrat, you're not allowed to vote if you have ever engaged in promiscuous sexual activity. How many senators do you think would step up to cast their vote? How many would pass that test? Something tells me not too many of them would. The newest line of attack against Pete Hegseth is that he would come to work at Fox drunk. These are such elementary character assassination. NBC reported this, and they based this accusation on 10 anonymous sources, people who refused to go on the record, to assassinate Pete's character. Once NBC released this hit piece on Pete Hegseth, Will Cain, Pete Hegseth's former co-host on Fox and Friends, in the space of one day, collected 19, and that's just the last time I looked. There might be more since the hour that I counted. Will Cain has 19 of Pete Hegseth's former coworkers on the record denying this allegation that Pete Hegseth was somehow a drunk. Again, might I suggest that we apply these standards, the promiscuity standard and the alcohol standard, to the United States Congress first? If you, as a senator, have ever used, for example, the fund in Congress to pay off accusers of sexual misconduct, if you've ever engaged in sexual misconduct, promiscuous sex, if you've ever had a drink in the United States Capitol, if you've ever been drunk, even just a little tipsy buzzed, then may I ask you to step aside for this nomination. We can accept these rules, we can accept these terms, but the first people who will be subject to these brand new standards are going to be those who vote in favor or not of the confirmation of President Trump's nominees. Senator Lindsey Graham told the media he thinks these accusations against Pete Hegseth look pretty bad. This is what he said.
Some of these articles are very disturbing. He, obviously has a chance to defend himself here, but, some of this stuff is going to be difficult. Time will tell. I like Pete. I've known him for a very, very long time.
Oh, it'll be difficult. Ask yourself this. Do you think Lindsey Graham is actually disturbed by these allegations? Or is Lindsey Graham disturbed by the fact that Pete Hegseth thinks that we should end the wars that Lindsey Graham profits off of, that Lindsey Graham likes? Lindsey Graham never met a war that he didn't like. And so there's been another sort of psychological attack that's been thrown at Pete Hegseth, too. There's been a report that President Trump is considering dropping Pete Hegseth and replacing him with Ron DeSantis instead. But you know what? Sean Davis of The Federalist spoke with sources close to the Trump transition team and said this story is absolute nonsense. In fact, there's a report, call it a rumor if you want, that these kind of stories are being planted by rhino senators. Rhino senators like Joni Ernst, for example, who don't like Pete Hegseth because they're neocons. Senators like Joni Ernst, who herself wants to be the Secretary of Defense. Now, Pete Hegseth said he talked to President Trump this morning, and Trump said to keep fighting, that you have to be tough as blank to defeat these people, but Trump believes that Hegseth is the man to do it. And I just want to say this. I have a message today for the despicable, lying sycophants who are throwing these fake hatchets at Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel too. You have no idea the sleeping giant that you have awakened when you weaponized government to target us and profited from spilling the blood of our beloved brothers and sons in your forever wars. If you think that we're going to roll over, just let you torpedo Trump's nominees with unsubstantiated, anonymous fake news and slimy character assassinations, you're utterly delusional. We were born for this fight. This is the core reason we elected Trump, to send disruptors like Hegseth, like Patel, into the swamp, to drain it. Right now, you're trembling with fear that Hegseth and Patel will wrestle power from your hands. That's exactly right. That's exactly what's going to happen. The moment the Senate confirms Hegseth and Patel, your reign of abuse is over. You know it, and we know it. We also know that these evil attacks on Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel are coming not just from radical leftists, but from slimy uniparty swamp creatures in the Republican Senate who've sold their souls for war profit and domestic power. We, the people, abhor you. And more importantly, we know your names. You have betrayed us once too many times, and you will be primaried into oblivion. The most profound words President Trump has ever spoken came just seconds after a would-be assassin fired a bullet that narrowly missed penetrating his brain. The president said to us, the American people, fight, fight, fight. Make no mistake, we will fight for these appointments. For Pete Hegseth, for Kash Patel, for Tulsi Gabbard, for Jay Bhattacharya, for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for Tom Homan. You have vastly underestimated the sleeping giant that you have awakened. We are roaring lions. We will be abused no more. For love of truth, for love of humanity, for love of our country, I encourage the United States Senate to confirm Pete Hegseth. But what's the mood of the United States Senate? Well, we got a peek into the Capitol. What's the Senate think of these false allegations coming from the uniparty through the media? Take a look at this.
And, or for that matter, I don't want him to admit the things he that didn't do if he truly didn't do them either. But the allegations are very, very serious. They can't be trivialized. And I just want to know that he's redeemed and going forward he's going to be better.
So, finger in the wind, what's your sense of the mood of the conference with this nomination?
I think there's the mood of the conference, and then there's the mood of the Trump transition team itself. So we'll see what kind of messages and signals we hear throughout the course of the day.
Stop it right there. We will see what kind of signals and messages we hear throughout the course of the entire day. Do you know what that means, my friends? It means that your voice makes a difference. It means that your voice matters. It means that the louder we speak, the stronger we speak, the more that we politely but firmly demand that our representatives in the United States Senate vote to confirm these nominees of President Trump's, the more likely they are to do so. If President Trump backs down on Pete Hegseth, and I don't think he will, it's not just a worse cabinet. It's a hit on the entire agenda. Conversely, if President Trump fights, and I think he will, this is not just a win against the media. This is not just a win for this particular nominee. This is a win for the entire America First agenda. It's also, if we want to speak in practical strategic terms here, it's a very effective tool to root out the corruption that exists within our own party. Take, for example, this scenario. If Pete Hegseth sits before the United States Senate in a confirmation hearing because President Trump had the iron will to weather Pete through these attacks, if Pete Hegseth sits before the United States Senate and is somehow torpedoed by the rhinos, then they are forced in public to expose their corruption to you and to me, which gives us the opportunity, the fire in our belly, if you will, to primary them. We are here to fight for these nominees. Tell your senator. If you're on your laptop, pull up your email right now. If you're on your cell phone, pull up X right now. Tag your senator, tag your nominee, tag your president, and tell them we're here to fight.